over here. Okay, perfect. So thank you, everyone. So if we look a little bit in the AI into the pharma market, we can see that it's been really moving a lot since 2015. So represented 175 million in 2015 and up to $9 billion in 2019. So a major jump there. But if we look in which sector was AI really inserted, that it was definitely in the drug discovery area, with 80% being of the market in this area and the sector. But when we look at the tendencies and the study for the future, we can see that it's the clinical trial research area that will be driving with close to 40% CAGR increase between 20 to 25. So we're talking about drug discovery, clinical research, but I mean, where is AI in pharma manufacturing then? And that's the topic that I wanted to discuss and present today. So then if we look at the context and why is it a challenge for the industry and AI to be in pharma in the facilities. So obviously it's a highly regulated environment. We have highly regulated facility. So this is a key factor. So the limited flexibility of the structure in place in the manufacturing area combined to factors of fragmented teams. So normally we have a very well-established production team, a QA team, and very limited then work done once the facility is in production into giving engineering or team support and budget for any improvement or new innovation in this market. So there are, but compared to other areas, this is really not where the pharmaceutical companies are concentrating their innovation right now. So also the infrastructure maturity is an issue depending on when the plant was built. Obviously, then there's a lot of changes that might need to happen. And the data, obviously with AI, we need data. So it is a challenging environment, and it will most probably be one of the reasons combined with all the regulation and the validation that needs to go around AI when we modify something in a validated environment, then obviously this is creating a challenge, and that will be explaining why. But then what would be a great point of entry to enter AI into the manufacturing world? So here, the 2 points of entry that we found at the Gendron group is really to first look into the non-direct impact areas of the plants. So all the non-GMP system actually are a great way to enter this mode. So you can think of the black utilities. When we say black utilities, it's all the city water, the water, everything that is not in direct contact with the product is considered black utility. Some of the ventilation systems that are not for the classified area can be looked at. The management systems as well. Some of the key elements for the personnel can be used. So there's a lot of still areas in existing facility where AI can be introduced and not really having so much of the validated environment difficulty and challenges. But where really we think that the key entry point for the pharma and AI is really into new greenfield facilities. So this is really for us our point of entry. I'll come back a bit to definitions later of greenfield, but first I'll look into the number one area where we're proposing to have AI entering in the non-direct impact. So obviously here we need to look at the risk-based approach, and that's why the non-impact are selected. we're in a validated environment, so it's really important that we choose the right places to implement AI, and we go to a risk-based approach. And also design thinking, selection strategy, look at where does the facility need, because there's going to be some resistance here and some difficulties in a validated environment. So it really needs to be aligned with the facility's objective. So either in maintenance, in cost saving, or in quality. So really try to tag the AI strategy with this environment. So let's look at some typical use cases. It could be in predictive and preventive maintenance. So this is a great area that is used in many manufacturing industry to be able to predict before there is going to be shut down or before the machine is going to have any issues. So then you're saving production loss, production costs, and also extending the life of your equipment because you can better manage them. So this is one of the case that can be used. Then production optimization. Here we're not talking about production control. So therefore, we're not really touching the quality. But if we look at all the process and we can optimize the full so there's a supply chain, but the process control itself by looking at the data and finding what are the optimal parameters for the different recipes or things like that. So we're not talking about changing or controlling something that is validated, but we're looking at the data to make better decisions. And one thing that one great example that I think here is for everybody to relate on how can we optimize the production is like, think of Google Map. When you're using your Google Map on a single day basis, Google Map doesn't just tell you where there's a traffic jam or what's the distance to get to where you're looking at, or if there's any construction or accident on the road. It doesn't present you all that. What does it present you? It presents you the end result of the analysis that it made with all the information and provides you with the fastest way to get to your destination. So this is really what we can do with production optimization, is analyze the data and find what is the optimal path. And here, not necessarily being in line directly in the production area, but actually knowing the fastest path or the principal parameters. So then we can look at energy management. With all the facilities now, there's so many opportunities to look at energy management. You can look at the cost saving for the heat. There's a lot of monitoring, and now there's AI that can be connected and identifying if there's personal or if there's equipment machine running that will control the temperature. So there's a lot of opportunities here that need to be investigated. And then supply chain optimization. Here, there's a huge gain that can be made, and I was reviewing a study with PricewaterhouseCoopers that was saying that here, if we look at the supply chain of the replenishment of the pharmaceutical industry compared to other industry, the pharma had an average of 75 days to replenish the stock versus 30 days for the normal industry. So there's a lot of cost saving that can be made there, and optimization of the supply chain. And this is just one example. There's many examples. Supply chain is complex, and it can definitely use AI. Okay, so now we're really getting to the key of the presentation, where we think there's the best opportunity for pharma is the greenfield facility. So first, some definition here. So what's a greenfield facility? Well, it's simple. It's a brand new construction that's starting on the greenfield piece of land. So that's how this definition is coming from, compared to normally when we talk about expansion or more modernization of a facility, we'll talk about the brownfield. So really a greenfield is a brand new construction, brand new facility. And I think this is where the pharmaceutical industry should really be concentrating, and that's where the best opportunity for AI to be integrated into the manufacturing area of non-direct impact. But here we can push the envelope further and we can go as well into direct impact. So this is what I'll be covering a bit more. So first, let's look at the context of the greenfield business trends or business model out there. So first, normally the pharma companies, it's not their line of business to engineer and build facility. They do discover and they engineer drugs, but not necessarily facilities. So normally what the companies will do, they will subcontract to a major engineering firm, which we call EPCMV firm, for engineering, procurement, construction, management, commissioning, and validation, where they subcontract that to people that are specialized in this area. So the big engineering firm of this world that has all pharma division, NNE, there's CRB, there's Jacobs, so there's many companies there specializing in just building brand new pharmaceutical facilities. So really, so this needs to be taken into consideration because they're a key player into this strategy. Then although they use now with all the security in place in the various pharma, with cybersecurity, with also trade secrets and all this. So obviously the IT now is really important, and normally the IT team will be used from the pharma and integrated in such a project. So this is one part of the trend that we see now happening on the market. Then this is really an environment where a risk-based approach will be used, because it's such tremendous work to build a brand new facilities from scratch and bring it to a top quality level for a regulated environment, so that more and more, and with the following the guidelines of the FDA, a risk-based approach will be used. And then quality by design, this is something that we see and I've been promoting for a long time. Involve the quality team early into the project, and then everything else flows so much better when you get to the final steps of the process. By including such activities like the early design verification or validation, you're ensuring your construction from your vendor level or everything on site is actually built to plan. You're saving costs when you get to the commissioning or the validation phase. So really having a quality by design, and then compliance model. We're going away a bit from the industry, from the typical V model of having all the design specification and testing everything several places and in several steps from FAT, SAT, IQ, OQ, PQ. Now we're going, there's really a trend to go on more on the right time, right place approach, and using more the ASTM type of 2500 type of model. So this is really the setup and the context in which AI needs to answer and find its place. So if we look into use cases that can be taken, that can be considered, here one really interesting one for the greenfield is that a greenfield project in the pharma industry is generating thousands and thousands of documents, like specification, drawings, all sorts of documents, the RFPs, everything that's going out, and obviously linked to the databases, linked to everything. There's a huge amount of work into indexing, posting, and having the information of documents at the right place. There's a lot of mismatch, cross-references that are wrong, tags that can be wrong. So here, some of the AI tool for document indexing can be amazingly useful for a greenfield project and for the pharma that will save enormous time and effort down the road. So then after that, if we look at predictive and preventive maintenance model, this is something I've covered already. Obviously here we can push the envelope a little further because we're really looking and designing a facility from scratch. But then afterwards, the other entry that I didn't discuss for the existing facility is really all the visual inspection and abnormal situation use. So this is a really interesting field if we look at everything that can be done now with AI. So with AI, with the imaging and all the data collection and the matching that can be done. If we think of raw material verification or inline vials that can be verified before they're actually used and filled, everything that can be automatic. If we think about the labeling, matching the data sheets with the label, identifying if something has been changed on the master, making a match, alerting if there's any issues. So there's a lot of great potential here with the visual inspection. We can talk about abnormal situation. In airports, all the abnormal situation, they use AI to identify a luggage. That could be a bomb or anything like that, but that can be used in pharma as well. Identify, is there a piece of equipment that shouldn't be there? There's an employee. Identify abnormal situation and creating alerts as well. So then energy management can really be pushed here with all the latest technology, with all the IoT here. This is really definitely something that can be integrated, and process on optimization in here. We can even look and push it further into process control, depending on what we're talking about, and obviously the risk model. It's going to be here. I wouldn't push about to go to unsupervised machine learning model here. It will probably be more something supervised, that it's manageable and more easy to validate. But I think there's an opportunity, and by the time here that if we have a pharma starting a greenfield in this age, by the time we get down, the regulation will have changed, we'll have more guidance, and hopefully we'll have more options and possibilities in there. So if we really look at this AI greenfield opportunity, then the validation and why is it an opportunity? I think here we can maximize all the data that can be used in validation. So normally validation by some pharma, it's a big, it's a lot of time invested and a lot of money. But if we use all the data that has been generated when we're doing all the factory acceptance tests, the SAT, the commissioning, there's a lot of data that can be used and then improve the process down the line. So there's a great opportunity here. And then the AI strategy integrated within the initial basis of design. So if it's integrated straight from the beginning with all the different engineering teams, then obviously the opportunities are wider and can be really taught on a global scale. I like to think there was Moderna in one of their facilities that was awarded by the ISPE, the Facility of the Future. That is a great example. But they design their facility having this in mind. So this is the key here. It needs to be integrated as per the basis of design. And then when we think about it, we have in a greenfield an optimal team profile. I really like the presentation was the who we read before, because here in the greenfield project, really it's the employees and the people are key. I mean, we're talking about all engineers, and here we're talking, that's what is great. Normally when you have a production environment, you really have more resistance. You have routine people, they're not in a flexible environment, and the level of education is also different. Here you're talking about teams that's what they do. They innovate, they create, they design. So this is a team of engineers that are used to be in a flexible environment and that like to innovate and create something new. So it's the perfect people to actually integrate AI because they won't be worried of losing their job. Why? Because they know they'll be there temporarily anyway. They do the design and then we're hiring brand new operators. So you don't have that resistance to change when you think about the greenfield facility. Then obviously here, the key is data and AI, and we all know it. And if you have a brand new facility, well, you have your opportunity to all gather the exact data that you want it and make sure it's all structured and archived the way you want it, but also linked. As we're thinking for the future of all the personalized manufacturing of drugs, well, how will that be possible? The only way it will be possible is because we will be able to trace every single part of the manufacturing process from with the patient and with all the raw materials and with all the equipment. And this will be critical to be able to use that match. So not just to have data, but have the data with the right information attached to it. So that will need to be considered and really thought through in advance in the process. Then integrated in the initial compliance risk-based approach. Obviously, here that will be the key on the compliance side is to be there from the beginning. So here is the chance because they're looking at a new facility and they're designing their strategy on how they're going to validate this facility. So if AI is there at the beginning, it's going to be integrated. They're going to think of the way to mitigate the risk if there's any and how to ensure that there is nothing risky for the client, the patient safety, and what's happening down the line for the production. So then one great advantage, no production loss. Here we can implement AI without having to stop production, without having to, let's say, sacrifice some lots, because obviously you don't want to test equipment and just collect data and run some testing on AI and manufacturing with real product. So here we're going to use all the testing of the equipment to do so, and so therefore you have the time in between the start of the construction and the startup of the equipment before you get to the PQ to run and get the maximum information and data as possible to avoid production loss. So if we look at some of the key success factor, well, really what we think for the pharma organization is really to have an AI project management organization that will look throughout the company and identify what are the key elements and where should they be focusing and learning from one organization to another and leveraging what is learned from one place to another, and having that tactical approach if they're going with the greenfield to think it through in advance and use different processes and maybe identify some initiatives that are being done in other places or where they should be focusing. Then the timing of the AI strategy and insertion into a greenfield is key. It needs to be there from the beginning because you're going to have to select an EPCM firm that will be willing to jump in and will be integrating this and that has the skills within their team to include AI in their design. So that facility needs to be taught and designed straight from the basis of design when you're selecting your EPCM firm to be constructing a new facility. Then there's also the use of the 3D model. Right now, the facilities, the engineering firm are building the facilities in a 3D model. There's some 3D model that can be used to run and extract data and to run the process through. So that should be maximized. It's an opportunity to be to use something that's already built anyway, and that you can use to implement your AI strategy. Obviously, those projects in a greenfield, we're talking about a long time. Starting a greenfield project will be from 3 to 5 years, sometimes more. There's a lot of time constraint, but if we're thinking about new greenfield that will be coming up, well, obviously in 5 years, a lot of things will happen into the AI regulation. So that AI PMO team and that quality team will definitely need to be verifying what's happening on the regulation side of things. And then the IT and AI team integration needs to be integrated. They cannot be working in silos, because really here it's really a one team effort, and that will be key to the success factor of this greenfield. Because if you have just the IT thinking their process and their strategy on one side, and the engineer designing and speaking to the equipment vendors on the other, you won't accomplish the final objective. So integration of the teams are key element. And then here also, we know pharma, it's regulation, it's QA. So really selecting an innovative QA and a collaborative straight from the beginning that will be working on this project will be key, because otherwise you'll be running in roadblocks. QA don't necessarily like to walk on unknown territory. So you need to make sure that when you put this organization in place, you have a QA that's willing to go through that route, and that will be supported, although we'll still not put any patient safety at risk, but that will be willing at least to innovate in this field. And then it's really the use of all the data. You can already start collecting data from the equipment, starting from factory acceptance at vendor site and throughout the full project life cycle, not wait that you're into a production environment. So there's a lot of opportunity to use the information here. Obviously, there's challenges. So to use a greenfield, so regulation, we're talking about the lengthy project. So obviously there's going to be updates during the project life cycle that will maybe create some difficulties that will need to keep a close eye on that complexity. A greenfield is already a very complex environment. It's very difficult to manage. There's a lot of time pressure for the go-to-market and the patent expiring. So the timeline are very short. So we're obviously adding AI is adding an additional complexity level. There's already a lot of stakeholders, so we need to make sure that everybody is on board. Then compliance, one of the areas, if you're asking a greenfield and an engineering team to launch something and they're starting from scratch from a white page, it is going to be difficult. It's already difficult to be designing a new facility. Then here, the idea would to have an organization that has established at least some policies and some guidelines and procedures to facilitate the work of the greenfield teams. And then obviously data, although there's possibility to gather data, it's never going to be the same that if you're using a facility that's been running for 5 or 10 years. So there is data access limitation here and bias management that will need to be considered. So really, finally, if we look at this, really what is the key of success? It's really the conjunction of the gathering the information and all the data, the computer science, the IT side that needs to be put together, and then all the tools, the machine learning, the AI, the math, the statistics to use this data to make the optimal decision. But then obviously, without having the life science and the business background of this, it's really difficult to identify what is the best strategy for a company to use AI. And this is really where the Gendron group specializes and help companies into managing their strategies and managing their project implementation throughout their company. So one thing that I like, was an example given by our chief data science officer, which I really enjoy. So here is the organization. One key element between all that, you can have all the best strategy, but is the organization ready to have a data-driven decision organization, or they're looking more for the HIPPO, which is the highest paid person's opinion, So this obviously counts. It's great to have all the data, but if down the line, having all the data will not be served and somebody will still be making a decision without looking at it, then obviously it's a lot of effort that can be wasted here. So that the final thought. So just quickly here on the Gendron group. So we really, what we're here is to help organizations identify their AI strategy to drive success and seize the competitive advantage. So we offer various types of project management and compliance services relating to AI and electronic verification. So, and I will be happy to help and answer any questions if they are at this point.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that wonderful presentation. Yeah, I see a few questions here in the chat box from Yang Zhong. I hope I spell it right. What are the major areas where AI brings value to the pharma industry?
Well, I think we presented a lot. So it really depends on each pharma industry and where their focus is. So if we think here on, here we're concentrating on manufacturing. And as I said right now at the beginning, right now, a lot of the pharma are using AI mainly in clinical research trial and drug discovery. So that's an area obviously that is key for AI on the market right now. If we look at the manufacturing aspect of it, then it really depends. It needs to be tied up with the company's objectives. So it can be either on the maintenance side that we covered, it could be on the energy management, more on the cost saving, it could be on the quality side. So the company already has some quality issues that they're dealing with. Maybe we can introduce an additional visual inspection type of technology. So it really then depends on where the company is really targeting and has some of their own objectives. I hope this answers the question.
Yeah. Next question is, how pharma AI benefits the time to market for new drugs? The question is from Isabella.
Well, I can answer. Obviously, the time to market for the new drugs, there's if we consider all the efforts that are being made into the drug discovery and the clinical trials. So obviously, if you're saving time into the drug discovery and then you're saving time into the clinical trials by having better quality data, by being able to either reject a drug faster because you have the results faster and the link faster, or to be able to continue. Then here, if we look at the manufacturing and by using AI to have better data in all your process control, then really what's going to happen is that when you're going to do your commissioning, your startup of equipment, and when you're going to get to your commissioning and then your engineering runs and your P2, ideally, if you have the information and the data and that you run through your model before, hopefully you're going to be really reducing your time to get to the market and to the production.
And there is one more question from Yoshiaki. So her question is, what does artificial intelligence bring to the pharmaceutical industry?
That's a very large question. So this is actually a bit really wide to answer. Well, it brings so many aspects, and it depends in which way. As I just mentioned, if it helps researchers discovering new drugs through some of the DNA sequencing or the molecules identification. Then in the clinical trials, using all the clinical trials data, the clinical trials is a lot of data. So by using models that will identify those data and identify those patterns to and now with all the wearables that are in the market, really, you can identify patterns from the different device to the clinical settings to the drug that is been tested. And gathering all this information for the clinical trials will be key. And here we're talking about making actually better product to better visual inspection, better process control. If we're looking at the process and at the trends, we're talking about saving money, a lot of money for the pharma industry into maintenance and avoiding loss of production or avoiding equipment breakdowns or shutdowns because of equipment replacement, and also the supply chain, ensuring that you are connecting then all the information, you're supplying your product on time. And as I said, when we're getting more and more into the personalized drugs, and to do that, we will need AI to make sure we can, in the blockchain, to make sure that we can identify and trace from point A to the delivery to the patient, that we have all the right information and the right equipment, and that we can trace it back. Without AI, without the industrial Internet of Things, this would not be possible. So then bringing that to the market without that technology will not be possible.